Hey guys, it is Kojin here, and today I wanted to have a quick video on pretty much Awakening stats and Ascension stats and where to place them properly. Today I'm just going to be showing you essentially where your points are going to be going, and by the time you hit max level, where exactly you should be. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Ascension first. These are skill points that you get through leveling up here. Once you hit 9,999, you'll have a ton of points pretty much to spend. Pretty much what I'm going to be showing you guys here is how to level them up from the beginning and which points you want to prioritize first. So in my opinion, pretty much you want to work on this right side first. As you're leveling up, especially from like 0 to like maybe even 5,000 Ascension, you want to work on getting pretty much everything in here maxed out besides the critical rate. The reason why we say not to do the critical rate is because you get a lot of critical rate from playing the game in general. There might be a point where you might need this when you start to run low on critical rate items. Just know that really, optimally, you don't need this. But sometimes you might adjust your build a little bit just to get that extra critical rate. Same thing with the base build. Most base builds don't use a lot of critical rate because, again, you get a lot of it pretty much free through playing the game. It's just one of those stats that are good to have, but you know, you're not going to really need it on your base character a lot. Next up, we have the Avarice. This will probably be the last one that you invest into. If you do decide to invest into it pretty early, I would go with Insanity. And I would also go with Greed. Pretty much this middle section, you subtract stats from another stat to add them to another stat plus a little bit more. So in this example here with Insanity, you're getting rid of -3 minimum damage to get +5 maximum damage, which if you do the math, you overall just get more damage. So most people just decide to go with this. Next up, we have the Greed one. Pretty much the same thing here. You're getting rid of critical rate to get critical damage. Critical damage is relatively the most important stat in the game. Critical rate is one of the least important stats to stack in the game, so it's one of those things where you just in general want to kind of balance yourself out by giving yourself more damage and then using items to buff your critical rate instead. It's just more efficient that way. Next up, we've got Sacrifice. We won't really talk too much about that. Kinslayer or Pride, those are really just late game damage enticers. We'll probably get into that another time, but on the left hand side, this is pretty much going to be the biggest one. Pretty much on this side, you want to start from the bottom up. In my importance, I would say that you want to go for cooldown reduction first, critical damage first, maximum damage first, and then everything else pretty much will come afterwards. The ones that I wouldn't say to invest too much into are like max HP. Once you hit that point in the game, you probably won't need to invest here much either. Minimum damage also, you probably won't need to invest too much into. But outside of that, pretty much you want to get just about everything else. Hopefully this guide kind of helps you out in that specific area. Next up, we're going to go into our Awakenings here. I'm already level 120, so I'm pretty much just going to click through this, and it's pretty much going to be the same for most people. I will kind of explain a little bit of what and why I do things this way specifically, and we'll just kind of go from there. So I'm going to start from the middle. Pretty much I'm going to go all the way up through here. Well, if I'm going to be from a beginner standpoint, if I'm a beginner, I'm going to go through this skill tree here, come through here, and I want to get to this specific sect of skill tree clusters. Pretty much these bigger runes are the ones that all have effects. So whenever you hit this point, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then pretty much you'll need 2 extra points to get to wherever you need to get to. I'm going to explain every single one of these pretty much by example. So when we get up here, this one's going to always be your damage rune. So like this will change your awakening skill pretty much. And for this, for example, since I'm playing Highlander, this is going to give me a spiral storm change. It makes me immune while using the skill. Huge deal. And it also gives me a damage increase, and the cooldown has changed a lot. So this is a huge deal here. We're going to go over here next. We're going to get Destruction Instinct. So pretty much what this does is this doubles the duration effect of the skill, and the skill cooldown is increased by 30%. So you get double the duration effect for Destruction Instinct, which is Survival Instinct, your LL6. You pretty much get, instead of 5 minutes, you get it for 10 minutes, and there's a 30% increase on the cooldown pretty much. So much needed. And then lastly but not least in this cluster, is the Awakening 2. This will reduce the skill cooldown by that skill of 30%, and it will double the damage or the amount of hits, which pretty much is double damage in that set effect. So pretty much when you get to this cluster, it'll probably be the cheapest thing that you could do starting off, because you get your survival instinct, you get double damage Awakening 2, and you get one of your main damage skills in Awakening form. So this is a huge deal firstly. Next up, after that, I would suggest either going this way and getting into this next 3 cluster over here, or I would go to the right, because with a lot of skills or with a lot of classes, they actually have like benefits to using this far right one. So really you just kind of have to read overall what exactly you want to go for. But in this case, we're going to go over here and we're going to pretty much just max out to this next cluster here. Going through this little aisle also will give you normal damage amplification, so keep that in mind. And also same thing with this one. This one instead will give you boss damage amplification. So overall, pretty big deal here. Next up, I would start to go through the middle for the mid gains here. We have a cooldown reduction of 5 and an elemental attack intensity of 2%. This is also pretty good. We will go ahead and also get these. This will be the Awakening 1 reinforcement. Pretty much this will double the hits of your Awakening 1 skill, which is your purple skills. And then Hero's True Color, this will double the set effect for your hero's nature, which is your green passive buff skill that gives you like HP and damage mitigation and things of that nature. So these are also super beneficial things that you would go for. Later on, as you're coming up the skill tree, you're going to want to grab these. Obviously, they reduce your HP, which is kind of a huge deal, but in exchange, you will get boss and normal damage amplification on the respective sides. These are also pretty important, but like I said, that's for in-gamers. Right now, we're considered probably in like mid-game. Let's say we're probably like level 30 or 40 Ascension with this skill tree setup pretty much. Next up, you're going to go ahead and you want to grab this next thing over here, which will be another Awakening node. This will awaken another one of your skills. Typically, it'll damage increase and give it like a KBR or something. So you definitely do want to be sure to read your skill descriptions while going through this. Next up, I actually would recommend for you to go, if you do go the middle route, to actually start to come up through here and grab your Infinity. The Infinity here is a big deal for main classes, and for subclasses I wouldn't necessarily grab this until a lot later, but for main classes definitely would recommend getting the Infinity skill here. This will add a shield to your Infinity, which through the meta game is a huge deal. Your Infinity pretty much will save you just about every single time that you use it. It's super good mid game, and I definitely do recommend this overall before you get into your other 3 Awakening skills in general. So after you get that, I will start to reach out and come over this way some more with Awakening skills. I wouldn't necessarily grab this. Some classes actually do need this. For example, with TK, you'll run out of AP, and this will pretty much give you another AP steal. So every time that you hit the enemy, there's a 1% chance for you to gain 250 AP, and at end game, pretty much you only have like 5,000 AP or something like that. So this is still a pretty big deal, because when you hit one enemy at a 1% chance, it's pretty huge. So next up after that though, we'll go to get our next Awakening skill here, and pretty much your mid-game process will probably look something similar to this. Another thing that people would like to do, and this is probably one of the most beneficial things that you can do after you reach this point, is to start to go up the middle here. And the reason why we want to go up the middle here is because you'll get dual critical damage 3%, and you will also get dual maximum damage 3%, which these are huge modifiers. Like, I can't begin to explain how important these 2 modifiers are. Like I said, once you start to get into your Awakening build, something that looks similar to this, you definitely want to start to come up the middle and work your way into this. Most of these smaller nodes, by the way, are just like basic stat increases. Pretty much just like small incremental increases to help you benefit yourself a little bit more. So after you get to this point, I would definitely start to work on Awakening gems. Pretty much you can get Awakening gems from opening up the crafting menu, and you'll open up the crafting menu and you will go to the crafting section, and then you want to go to the Awakening Stone section. And pretty much once you get to the Awakening Stone section here, you'll need a certain amount of shards to Awakening Stones, and now you can get seasonal ones, by using Atlas gear, materials, and platinum hammers to be able to get a 60-day stone that pretty much has double the effects of the mysterious awakening stones. But if you're just getting into this, definitely go with the regular stones first and then work your way into seasonal. 9 times out of 10 you're not even going to have the mats to even do this anyways, so definitely would start here first. Pretty much what you're doing here is that you're using your shards to get stones that will have bonus stats on them. So for example, let's say that I roll a mysterious slot stone or something like that. I don't have an extra one on hand for right now, but pretty much let's say that I roll one of these and I get, you know, plus 10 attack. Next one I roll, I'll get plus 100 luck, plus 250 strength, and then pretty much you'll just keep rolling them. The thing that you want to try and get the most on there is critical damage within the rate of 40 or 50. If you can get something like that plus extra stats, you're pretty much in the clear. That's pretty much the whole point of getting mysterious nodes. So for people who like the shard farm, that's honestly one of the biggest things that you can do to make money, is to start shard farming and selling awakening stones. If you can get those higher stats, you're definitely going to be in the gold. People love those and eat them up. You could probably sell one of those for like 5 to 10 bills. So shard farming definitely is one of those things that I would start to get into, so that way that I can trade awakening stones later on. But anyways, so awakening stones pretty much go into these slots here in the awakening tree, and as you can see here, you got one of them. So just imagine you get 5 plus 50 critical damage awakening gems. It's pretty huge deal. Okay, so next up after that, I would probably start to come down this way, because there's a lot of interesting things that come down this way. As you can see, there's a huge cluster of really big runes, and we'll just kind of break them down. But as you're coming down this main one, you want to go ahead and just kind of go ahead and start to get your awakening skill first. And this is probably the biggest deal first off, because awakening skills pretty much double the amount of damage that you do, and not only that, but they increase the number of targets that you can hit at once. So that's another really big thing there. After you're done there, most people would recommend just going for your 5th awakening skill, but 9 times out of 10, if you have 4 of your awakening skills, you're probably already in the clear, and you would probably start to go for other things. So at this point, you have every awakening skill open on your keyboard, and at this point you're pretty much gold. Typically this will happen right around like level 70ish. You'll awaken all of your awakening points. You could probably just count them here, but this is probably the most efficient way to spend your points going off. Obviously going up this middle section is very optional. If you decide to save these points and go for your awakening first, that's also very doable. But right now I'm also going to go ahead and just kind of talk about some of these extra ones and what other extra runes are actually very beneficial on here too. So after you get all your awakening skills, one thing that I would recommend first off is getting the skill master runes here. They're going to add +1 targets each, so that's +2 targets that you'll be able to hit. Most skills will hit for 13 enemies, some hit for 12, so that'll put you at 14 or 15 enemies hit. That's super good. It's definitely going to be beneficial for anybody who needs it. Some classes need it more than others, and honestly having these will make some classes more OP than others. It's just the way that the game kind of balances out. So after that, I would also look at these ones here. Poison will subtract -20 movement speed, and then it will give you more damage amplification. Like I said, damage amplification is like a late game thing, so you'll start to see a lot of these runes have this on there. These I would definitely start to get after you get some of these more specific runes. Transcendent here is probably the most important rune after you get these runes in the middle here. Pretty much what this does is that according to your ascension level, you will get pretty much a percentage of that turned into critical damage, and I think at end game it's like 200 or 300 extra critical damage, so it's a pretty big deal. Just keep that in mind. Next up here we've got Steel Stamina. Steel Stamina is pretty much the same thing as Transcendent, but it's for HP, so pretty much based on your ascension level, a certain amount of percentage will be turned into HP. And this is good for those really frail classes. Some of those really frail classes can really benefit from that, like Judgment, VF, One-Stalker, Highlander. Classes that are pretty much on the more kite aggressor side of the game will definitely benefit from something like this. Next up we've got is the Swift rune. This is one of those like severely optional runes, but if you're hitting an enemy, there's a 1% chance for you to get an increase in movement speed for 60 seconds. plus 50. It's super optional. Most people would not even waste their time with this. I personally wouldn't waste my time with it either. Next up on the right hand side here, we've got the max HP rune, which is pretty much the same thing as the steel stamina rune. But it's just a 5% one. It's kind of important too for those kiting classes. Definitely cool. I missed this one on the left here. This one's just plus 12 critical damage. This one's pretty optional too, but at the end game it starts to stack up, especially when you realize that there's other smaller critical damage runes around it. So really you just turn that 12 into a 20 just from getting these 3 runes here, and that 20 will pretty much multiply to be more than that. Obviously that 20 might be 50 critical damage really, so that's something that's also really kind of cool there. So back to the right hand side, we've got Cruel Pain. Cruel Pain is definitely something that you need after you get everything fully awakened. Pretty much when you're attacking enemies below 38% HP, there's a 5% chance for you to inflict plus 10 additional damage lines on them. So this is super important for things like bosses or like really tough enemies that just are super annoying to deal with. Something that you definitely could benefit from while you're actually going through the right side of the awakening tree. If you decide to go on your right side first, this will definitely be something to pick up as early as possible. It'll definitely help you overall. Those 10 damage lines don't really seem like a lot, but as you're attacking, 5% is a lot. So I definitely would keep in mind and use that properly too. Next up, we've got Runaway Locomotives. Pretty much if your stats are below 50%, there's a chance that you'll receive this special effect. You will get all 3 of these buffs. You'll get cooldown reduction 20%, probability of crit by 5%, and movement speed by plus 50. So I definitely would keep that in mind there. Next up, we've got Noblesse. Noblesse is relatively optional, but it is pretty beneficial. It's more or less for farming. If you're farming a lot of EXP and stuff like that, this will probably come in handy. Pretty much this will give you 1% max damage, critical damage, and min. So super huge deal. Next up, we've got Fatal Wounds. Fatal Wounds is again one of those boss amplification runes where you subtract like accuracy, movement speed, or whatever to get extra. Next up, we've got Agility. Agility pretty much will either give you a extra forward or back dash, and it'll reduce the cooldown of your back or front dash. So this can become super vital later on in the game, especially right around Theater, Cathedral, going into Atlas, things like that. This will be very beneficial. And all the way at the top here is probably the most useless of them all is the Legend 2 Stun Rune. This adds a stun effect to your Legend 2. For those of you guys who don't know about Legend 2, your Legend 2 pretty much is kind of useless without this, but at the same time, because of the cooldown of it, a lot of people don't want to spend their time using or spending the runes to get this. I wouldn't recommend it either, so just take your time with whatever works out the best here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not really a whole lot to say here, but just know that in general there's a whole lot that you can do with your awakening tree, and just go through, read the runes and stuff like that, and you'll definitely learn to benefit a lot from it. But pretty much this is the base skill build for most people who are looking to get into their awakenings and looking for the cheapest way to get into their awakenings. This is probably the cheapest way to get through your awakening tree as well. So thank you guys for watching, and again, I will see you on the next one. Peace.